Hello. Well, today I wanted to talk about the 20th anniversary of Batman Begins, which was on June 15th. Would have talked about this last week, but I wanted to do obviously a video about seeing The Empire Strikes Back in the theater and what that was like. But I remember seeing this for the very first time when I was 11. I really loved it. Christian Bale became my favorite Bruce Wayne Batman. Got to see Scarecrow on the big screen for the first time, as well as Ra's al Ghul, or Ra's al Ghul, if you want to be very accurate to the comic pronunciation. But Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul, he wasn't somebody who was super well known to the general audience. Most people knew about what they saw on television and the movies. And so, if you were to just read the comics where this character was in, you might actually pronounce it Roz instead of Raish, because, well, obviously there's no H after the S, and so for many people, that'd be a way to pronounce it, but of course, it's a very foreign name, obviously, and so therefore those names often can have certain pronunciations, even when the spelling doesn't necessarily correlate with that, at least not to perhaps the mind of those who are not from said region. This film came about because obviously they wanted to make a new film for quite some time after Batman Begins, but or Batman or Robin, it's just Batman Begins, but Batman or Robin was not a huge hit. It made money, but it was not a huge, big money maker, and critics and audiences disliked it and were not happy at all. And so people just kind of were not fond of it. Like if they wanted a campy Batman, they'd watch the Adam West show. They don't need to spend money going to the theater. And so many projects were proposed, and depending on which one you look at, some got decently far, but then one reason or another they never came to be. Obviously, the proposed fifth Batman film to follow Batman and Robin, called under two titles like Batman Unchained and Batman Triumphant, was but the latter was what was commonly used, though it seems like Batman Unchained would have been the title if the movie actually went into production and got made. Apparently that film would have been the movie that had the Scarecrow, and apparently Nicolas Cage was the person they wanted to be Scarecrow, and they also wanted the film to be dark. And apparently Madonna was going to be Harley Quinn, and that would have been something. Would have made it where she's the Joker's daughter. But obviously, it eventually got to where Christopher Nolan, who had done Insomnia in 2002 for Warner Brothers, heard from his wife, who got a call about Warner Brothers wanting to make a new Batman. Was curious if he would be interested in looking into that. She said, "I don't think that would be something you'd be interested in, right?" And he actually responded very positively, like, he always kind of thought there was a Batman story never told. And he gave a pitch to Warner Brothers of like 10 to 15 minutes, and from that pitch, he then got to work on making the movie. David S. Goyer is the person who helped co-write the film with Christopher Nolan, who then helped write the stories for the next two installments of the Dark Knight trilogy with Nolan. The Dark Knight Rises, and then of course there is the casting and Christian Bale as Batman, Bruce Wayne. To me, he is the best. He really embodied the various personas that Bruce Wayne has. Batman, where all of his anger and pain goes into. He does a great job with that all three films. I know a lot of people give him a lot of gruff for the voice. Obviously, a lot of people don't mind the voice in this film, Batman voice, but the next two films, and I remember seeing, like, in 2012 when The Dark Knight Rises was coming out, there was various articles, and there was somebody who helped work with the editing, like sound editing in particular, and noted, but of course this was over 10 years ago, and I don't think that is archived anywhere, so. But I remember distinctly, and it was like, that apparently, Christian Bale, he had his Batman voice in the first film, but in the second, Nolan kind of wanted it to be a bit darker, a bit gruffer. Like the longer he's Batman, the gruffer his voice is. But on this film, it's been noted that he lost his voice, particularly the very first time he spent a full day as Batman talking in that voice, all day basically, that he lost it and had to recover for a little bit until he could actually find a way to properly talk like that without losing his voice. And so because of that, he was not able to actually properly give the kind of voice Nolan wanted, and so they changed every single time he speaks as Batman. They added a bit of an effect to make his voice have a bit more of a growl to it than what Bale could naturally do. Again, I don't believe it's archived anywhere, but I remember just reading a whole bunch of stuff prior to The Dark Knight Rises coming out. And, of course, I also saw all three of these films in the theater when The Dark Knight Rises came out. And so seeing this again in 2012 was amazing. And then, of course, the subsequent films, The Dark Knight, and then the then new film, The Dark Knight Rises, at 12 o'clock midnight, July 20th, 2012. And just seeing these films back to back like that was amazing. You saw the full story unfold. And as I've said before, there's like 15-minute intermissions, so you can go to the bathroom. If you have popcorn, you get more popcorn and refill with drinks if you have any. And that was fun. That was great. And Michael Caine as Alfred. He's the perfect Alfred. Gary Oldman as Gordon. He's the best Gordon. Sergeant Gordon, and at the end, Lieutenant Gordon. Katie Holmes was very good as Rachel Dawes. Maggie Gyllenhaal did a fine job in The Dark Knight, though I don't know, I always liked Katie Holmes' performance better. There's an innocence to the character in Batman Begins that wasn't there in The Dark Knight. Which obviously, there is, that makes a good amount of sense in that there's some changes going on from this film to the next, but still, I think the sort of the portrayal, it was obviously, there was a difference between the actresses, obviously, but still, Maggie Gyllenhaal was fine. Liam Neeson as Ra's al Ghul, of course, he was very good. He played the Ra's al Ghul very well. The man who is sort of becoming the mentor of sorts, the father fatherly figure to Bruce Wayne at a time where he's trying to, he wants to learn and understand the mind of a criminal so that way he can go back to Gotham and obviously becomes Batman. But, at that point he doesn't know that, but he wants to help rid the city of the crime that's going on, especially with organized crime with Carmine Falcone and other mob guys. Cillian Murphy as Scarecrow was very good. He's excellent. He auditioned to be Batman, but as Murphy has said, as soon as he knew Christian Bale was in the running for Batman, he's like, I have zero chance at this part, but he took it because he liked the films Nolan made prior, and it was like, as long as I could say I worked with him for like a day or two, just doing a screen test, that would be quite a bit fulfilling for him at that point in his life. That would be great. And of course, Christian Bale got the part, though there's many people who went out for that part. Henry Cavill, who of course would later become Superman in the Man of Steel movies in the DC EU universe, he auditioned to be Batman. Obviously didn't get it, and then there was a screen test which so far has not surfaced, which is of Jake Gyllenhaal as Bruce Wayne Batman. And apparently David Gorey said, for me, I actually wanted Jake Gyllenhaal, but in the end, Christian Bale got the part. And yeah. Ken Watanabe as the fake Ra's al Ghul. Small part, but very effective. Rutger Hauer as, an executive running Wayne Enterprises, who does a very good job. He's kind of an evil guy, but, he seems alright, but his motives of the way he wants to sort of run the company might not be up to snuff. Tom Wilkinson as Carmine Falcone, the big boss, mob boss. Yeah, he did an excellent job. He was a fantastic actor, and knocked the role out of the park, as everybody did in this film. And Morgan Freeman, of course, as Lucius Fox, the guy who helps Bruce Wayne get all the stuff he needs to be Batman, the vehicles, the tumbler, which is the Batmobile, to the suit and the various gadgets he has. Obviously, there are some people who aren't super fond of how Bruce doesn't really make his own stuff, and that's a shame. But, if, Wayne Enterprises helps make things for the government, which most of that stuff was for the government, like for the military in particular, and if they don't use all that, then that just stays like in their warehouse. I guess, it's just collecting dust, so why not use it? And, yeah, I just love this film. I'm pretty sure I've said this before, but Gary Oldman has said that he believes he was asked to be Scarecrow, though in the Fire Rises documentary, as part of the big, deluxe edition of the Dark Knight trilogy, 6 discs, Christopher Nolan actually says he actually was asked to play Ra's al Ghul, and he said no. And either way, they're villainous roles, so it doesn't really matter, I guess, in a way. But because Gary Oldman, he didn't want to be a villain really anymore. He got basically typecast for a period like in the 90s and early 2000s where we need a bad guy. Let's get Gary Oldman. And he said for a while it was fun. But after a bit, the fun wears off and you're sort of doing it just for the money. He would still obviously do the work best way he can, obviously, play the part as competently and all, but at the same time, it's kind of like, you know, this isn't as fulfilling as it was a few movies back. and But yeah, this definitely helped Gary Oldman get out of the cycle of always being a bad guy in movies. Finally got to be a good guy. Um, and this helped Christian Bale really achieve mainstream success. Obviously, he did other films like American Psycho, which would become a cult film, largely thanks to this being released 5 years after American Psycho. When this came out, and Christian Bale is now a big star, thanks to being Bruce Wayne Batman, Lionsgate released 2 DVDs, one the R-rated cut, so that got a re-release, and then the uncut version, where a few seconds was added that at the time when it was released had to be cut, because otherwise those few seconds would have given it an NC-17. So anyway, thanks to this film, that movie got a bigger audience, because they had the same star in the film. Yeah, almost started to say stars. But yeah, this kicked off the Dark Knight trilogy, and obviously, you know, a lot of people like to just take shots at Batman and Robin, and there are various things not all that great, obviously, with that film, but, you know, hey, because that film came out and was not a huge success, if that was a success and made money at the, you know, on that level, it doesn't need to be a critical success, but if it made money, the likelihood of this film being made likely would not have happened, and Batman wouldn't, who knows, might not have actually been able to have taken that dark turn that apparently Joel Schumacher and everybody wanted to take with a fifth film. And so, because of that, in a way, we have that to thank for this film. Also, the Aviator, because Nolan wanted to make, you know, a Howard Hughes film, which he's still wants to make, but Martin Scorsese was going to make The Aviator with DiCaprio, and so his Howard Hughes film, which would star Jim Carrey, had to then be put on the back shelf or the back burner, which it has yet to be taken off of properly beyond Nolan occasionally looking back at it and punching it up here and there. So yeah, hopefully that film will get made one day. But Nolan seems to be completely fine and happy with this film as well as the next two films. He actually says he has to really defend this film and The Dark Knight Rises, because all people really want to talk about is The Dark Knight. And this film does give a hint at who the villain would be in a subsequent film, with the fact that Gordon gives Batman a card which is a Joker playing card. And also on the little evidence baggie, it says like the person or whoever it was on the name, says like J. Kerr or Joe Kerr. Right now, I've just blanked out of my mind if it was actually J. I think it was J. dot and then Kerr. So J. Kerr, Joe Kerr. So this did hint at more, but Nolan said that was never really sequel bait. It was more like end on a note where if this film turned out very well, which of course it did, then the what people would want is you'd want more. And what more would you want? Well, you would like the Joker to appear. And of course he would appear in The Dark Knight, and Heath Ledger would play that part to perfection. and go up toe to toe with Christian Bale's Batman, and yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, the personas that Bale did as Bruce Wayne was obviously the Batman with all the pain and anger. Would went gone into I kind of gone on to other things, but and then of course the Playboy persona, the fake Bruce Wayne, who's sort of egotistical in a way and a bit too self-absorbed to ever do anything selfless, like really help the city out of the kindness of his own heart. Like sure he'll give money here and there to various donations and charities and donations to charities and so on, and give it to certain things, but that would be really just to make himself look good, not because he truly believes in whatever he's giving money to. And then, of course, there's the real Bruce Wayne that people like Alfred and Rachel and even Lucius would know. And Christian Bale played that to perfection, not only in this film but the next two films. And this kicked off a trilogy which to this day is still loved. So thank you to Nolan and everybody in this who made this and the next two films. Obviously Christian Bale, Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, Morgan Freeman, and Cillian Murphy are all in all these films. But yeah, those are the five that were in every movie. Cillian Murphy, of course, had a cameo in the next two films. But yeah, great film, still amazing 20 years later. Remember it well, going to the theater, loving it, and loving the next two films. So yeah, that's my overall rundown again. Every so often when this happens with this film, I like to talk about it. Same with the other sequels. Because yeah, this really became my Batman. I obviously saw the Adam West show, and then also the 4 Batman films from 89 to 97, as well as the various animated stuff. But this one really, just the portrayal of Batman and Bruce Wayne, the intrigue and the interesting and the depth of Bruce Wayne really shines. And that's always that has always appealed to me with this film and the subsequent sequels. The Bruce Wayne story, to me, that was always sort of missing with all those. And I also got to see the serials. I got those. I have them. I watched them. I have yet to talk about those, but that'd be something interesting to talk about. In many ways, they are a product of their time, and that, of course, can be a negative and a bad, a negative and a positive. But yeah, perhaps I'll talk about those two serials some point. But because of this, they released those on DVD, and I got those and watched them, and they were fairly enjoyable, for what they are. It's been a while since I have, so who knows? Maybe my opinion on them might change a bit. Who knows? Maybe it's the same. Yeah. But, thanks to this film, a lot of people got really into Batman again. I always liked Batman, so seeing an excellent film like this in the theater, being my first real true Batman experience on the big screen, was great. So what do you think about this film? Do you like it, dislike it? Sort of somewhere in the middle? You can let me know in the comments below. And yeah, I will talk to you all next time. Hope all of you are having a great day and have a great weekend and a great next week. It will be July. Yeah, so yeah, take care. Bye.